Hello, this is Courtney Drake McDonough. I'm the owner and managing editor of RealFoodTraveler.com, a culinary travel digital magazine, and this is the Real Podcast. This time we are talking bees and beekeeping and the importance of bees and why a veterinarian is managing beekeeping. So our guest today is Dr. Jennifer Short, who has the Sanctuary Farms Apiary and Camano Island Honey. So without further ado, Dr. Short, let's get to know you and what your business is all about.
Awesome, Courtney. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I am Dr. Jennifer Short, as Courtney said, and I'm a bee veterinarian, which is pretty unique in this day and age. I'm the owner of Sanctuary Farms Apiary and Camano Island Honey out here in beautiful Puget Sound. The business actually has been going now for about 3 years, and but I've been in the farming and agriculture business for a very, very long time in various ways, so that's who we are.
So talk about how Camano Island Honey came to be.
Well, Camano Island Honey really didn't start as a honey business or in any form. The short answer was that it was a response to a lack of pollinators that we had out here on the island when I moved out here about 5-6 years ago. I love gardening, and so gardening is kind of my passion, agriculture and farming. I love it. So when I put in my garden for the first year, I found that the production side of it was just really terrible. It was lacked real, big vegetables or a lot of vegetables on the plants, and so it just made me aware that there weren't a lot of bees in the area, and since I'm on the south end of this island, you can see that the production of flowers and plants was just really not what it could have been. I also have this huge propensity for agriculture, like I said, and farming and gardening, and I love animal agriculture, and so I found that it kind of filled a niche for me, beekeeping, to be able to do animal agriculture without the need for a large parcel of land. What I really started out doing was making honeybees. I really started out just wanting to expand the number of honeybees in the area. So since the void in our pollinator population was really obvious, it made sense to me to go ahead and start really just going ahead and making more bees. So once we started developing that skill set for making a lot of bees, well, one of the byproducts of that, of course, is honey and wax. And so we found that we once made a lot of bees that it made sense to go ahead and take those byproducts and be able to reinvest them back in our system so that we could go ahead and do more educational and tourism components to the business. So we've expanded into product development and educational tourism where we promote bees through awareness presentations and speaking engagements and tours at our facility. And I also do a lot of consulting with landowners in adjoining counties. Some of the biggest counties are just south of me, where Seattle is in King County, and those folks as well want to go ahead and support pollinators and support agriculture. So they've allowed me to come into their area and go ahead and expand their interest in the bees and beekeeping by facilitating hives on their properties down in those more highly populated areas.
I'm intrigued by the phrase you used, making bees. What do you mean by that?
Bees love, one of the idiosyncrasies of bees is that they love to reproduce. So a queen will literally lay a good queen will lay a couple of thousand eggs a day. And so her whole mission in life is to go ahead and make more bees. And when she gets to a point, and the workers all agree that there's so many bees in that particular house that they can't stand it anymore, they go ahead and they swarm, and it's reproduction on a colony level where they make 2 colonies out of 1 colony by going ahead and the queen takes half of the entourage and takes off and makes a new colony. So I take all of that innate natural instinct, and I go ahead and I allow them to do that exponentially and kind of plow the road for them and make it easy for them to make more bees and make more colonies by going ahead and splitting my colonies when they get to a size where they feel like they want to go ahead and take off. But I go ahead and I pull them out first and relocate them so that they don't feel like they have to do that. So it's called splitting a colony, and I've been able to do that pretty well over the last couple of years and get them to reproduce kind of exponentially.
That's amazing. And you talked earlier about creating pollinators for the whole area. How far-reaching, and literally how far, can the bees that you help create go, in sort of spreading the pollinator love?
Well, there's really no limit. The beauty of bees is that they live in a box, so they're pretty easy to transport. And I have a really great community here on this island where I've had people go ahead and contact me and volunteer to get involved in our Host-a-Hive program. So I have people who have Camano Island Honey hives on their property, and I come and I maintain them and make sure that they're healthy and do the diagnostics and treatments that they might need. But the people go ahead and they donate their property, their land, to allowing me to site hives on their land. So I have hives all up and down the island, which is about 15 miles long. And so I can kind of spread them as much as the bees will allow.
Okay, so it's not so much, and excuse the naivete of my question, it's not so much that the bees fly so far, it's that you're placing hives around and spreading the pollination that way.
Yeah, both actually, because the bees they like to keep to about a 2-mile radius when they fly, when they forage to go collect pollen and nectar. And so I try to go ahead and make sure that there's a little bit of overlap, but that my yards are spaced so that I get a pretty good population density all the way up and down the island.
That's amazing. When you and I were coordinating this call for the podcast, you mentioned that you're up really, really early, that your day gets started very early, which just made me tired just thinking about that. So this was a compromise for our call to happen at 7 a.m. your time, 8 a.m. my time. So tell me what a typical day is like for you.
Yeah, it's kind of brunch here. So I start right around 4-ish in the morning, and it's not that I set an alarm clock. It's just the way my rhythms kind of work. So it's just a habit. I'm a morning person, so productivity and creativity is way higher AM versus PM for me, and I just use that to my advantage instead of wasting it, right? Mm-hmm. So in the morning, I'll go ahead, and what's funny is you talk about what's a typical day, and when you do bees, you learn there is no typical, right? Every day is just off the wall different. You just never know what you're going to find or what's going to happen. So what I tend to do, though, is while the bees are still asleep during the darkness of the early morning, I'll do all my R&D, so all my research and development ideas, internet searches for what products I'm going to launch the next year, or labeling or packaging research. All my educational and learning skill development gets done early in the morning when I'm pretty bright and I'm absorbing my maximum. And then the mundane business-related work, the stuff you have to do just because you're in business, like pay bills and file quarterly tax reports and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then my work planning. And that all happens kind of in the first 5 to 6 hours of the day. And then I switch my focus to the farming aspect of the business and tend to the animal health and welfare issues that are pending for that day. I'll know approximately what hive inspections or what yards need to have feeding or treatments or diagnostics done. And so I have to plan for all that, have all my equipment gear in the truck if I'm going to go to a different yard. And then that once the day starts with daylight and the bees are up and rousted and doing their thing, that part of my day can last anywhere, around 5 to 6 hours on the average. That's another chunk of time. And if something goes wrong or something's hinky, then, that could go well into, late afternoon and early evening. The bees don't really like to be fussed with once the sun goes down, so I try not to fuss with them at all once the dusk comes. And then once I've gotten all that under control, I try to focus on the end of the day tasks at that point that don't require a lot of creativity or mental gymnastics, right? Like I'll do my record keeping late in the afternoon or evening. I'll do my emails, phone messages, and just catching up on bee news because I belong to a few Facebook sites, beekeeping Facebook sites, so I try to keep up with those ladies, the women in beekeeping, and that's my typical day.
Wow, that's a long day. That's a long day. So you're a veterinarian. I don't normally think of veterinarians and bees. So was it a stretch, or did it seem strange at all for you to take that path in your career?
I get that question a lot. And what's funny is that the veterinary schools now are starting to focus on bees and beekeeping because a lot of beekeepers have to use different chemicals and antibiotics in order to treat their bees for diseases. So the veterinarians are starting to just now engage in bees and beekeeping, but I don't really, it's not at all actually been a stretch. I was a large animal veterinarian specializing in intensively managed herd health and welfare for about 25 years. So moving from, those kinds of animals to another intensively managed, packaged, production animal was a pretty easy transition. I also owned and operated an organic dairy for about 7 years while I was a practitioner, and so that helped a lot, not only with the animal side of the business and understanding the intensive management requirements of the animal, but also with the product and business challenges. Dairy is probably the most challenging product that you can get involved with on an agricultural level, just because it's so volatile. There's a very short shelf life, and it is, it's just, and bees are a lot like dairy animals. So again, that transition was very easy to kind of make.
That's amazing, and especially given that you worked with large animals. I mean, my gosh, going from that to tiny little bees, that's
I've
really...
gone from the largest to the smallest,
yeah,
haven't I?
Yeah. So a very fundamental question. What's the deal with bees? Why is it so important right now to nurture them and to make sure their survival is intact?
I just gave a presentation here locally, and I do a lot of the pollinator awareness presentations for a Grange group, and they all, everybody really wants to have that particular question answered. And so the big issue about supporting the bees is primarily that we're trying to produce more food resources on a smaller and smaller footprint of agricultural space. I mean, as our population becomes larger, the land we have to grow food on becomes smaller, and that makes logical sense, right? So in order to make that smaller space more productive, so they can grow what we need to either make it more productive by adding fertilizers and eliminating disease and stuff through chemical applications, or we need to have each plant make more and bigger fruits and vegetables some other way. So I think what's important for people to understand is that we've tried pouring chemicals on crops for years, and that's not faring very well for us. And we've seen a population transition where people want more organic food. They want food that's less, tainted with chemicals and drugs and things like that. So in order for us to bridge that gap, we're going to have to focus on the pollinators to step up our game, I think, and allow them to go ahead and make our agriculture more productive by pollination. So, and another big problem we face is forage diversity. So like the more we implement monocrop agriculture, growing big, huge, vast fields of corn or canola or whatever it is, the less hedgerows and open space we have, which means the nutritional diversity is kind of going downhill for these bees and pollinators, and it creates stress. So those are all real big issues that we have with pollinators and why they're so important to us.
Well, that's very interesting, and thank you for that really logical explanation. That makes a lot more sense now. So if someone's interested in becoming a beekeeper, even if it's just in their own backyard, what are some of the basic criteria that they should have in order to be successful?
I watch a lot of beginning beekeepers, and even though a lot of older commercial guys would go ahead and look at me and say, well, you're just a beginner too, I've got 25 years of veterinary experience behind me working with these kinds of animals. So I brought that to the table with me, so I kind of understand them, I think, on a level that a lot of even the commercial beekeepers don't understand from a medical standpoint. And I think anyone can buy a colony of bees and put them in their backyard. I mean, that's not really the challenging part of it. The trick is to keep them alive, and especially through the winter. Our losses here in Washington State last year for hobbyist beekeepers was close to 44%, I think. So, and that's the last survey that we just saw from the Pollinator Partnership. So our bees are being affected by a small mite. It's kind of like a tick that transmits viruses to the baby bees in the comb. And so that mite can run rampant in a colony, and essentially the viruses will kill the bees early so they won't make it to the spring when the queen starts to lay eggs again to replace them. So that's kind of the biggest challenge that we have is this mite and being able to diagnose it and treat it and get it out of the colonies before it affects the bee in the comb. So if you really want to be successful at keeping bees, in my opinion, you really have to be ready to commit to the time it takes to learn, inspect hives so you know what good and bad looks like. I've done, 1,000 inspections now, and every time I do a daily inspection, often I'm still seeing things that I've never seen before, so they could be quite challenging. So, and you also need to invest in the processes needed to make sure that they're healthy and well fed. And the person who thinks they can go ahead and drop a bee colony in their backyard and then just collect honey in the fall and wait for spring again is not going to have a live colony come spring. So that's kind of the challenges that people face.
That's a lot. So, big picture, if you could accomplish anything you want to with Sanctuary Farms and with Camano Island Honey, without any obstacles in your way, what's your dream for what it could become?
Wow, that's a tough question, just because there's just so much diversity with the bee and what directions that you can go into. We've got guys who just focus on pollination services, and we've got guys who just focus on honey, and there's a lot of hobbyists that focus on, the balms or the lip balms, which we also do, but my vision of Sanctuary Farms and Camano Island Honey really came out of my drive to be an educator. I taught at a couple of universities in veterinary medicine, and I really love teaching and educating people. So my big accomplishment would be to be a destination agritourism venue that people can come to because it's unique, it's exciting adventure, and to visit with the bees and learn how to help them. And that's kind of what would be kind of the peak of the mountain for me.
That sounds wonderful. You touched a little bit on balms and some of the other products. Tell us a little bit more about what products you do produce there.
In our surplus last year, we went ahead and we decided to develop some homeopathic skin balm. Because I was an organic owner of an organic dairy, I learned to be a homeopathic veterinarian. So since I couldn't use drugs and chemicals on the animals being organic, I had to learn how to use essential oils and things like that. So so in this whole journey, our philosophy at Sanctuary Farms was that awareness is kind of best facilitated through the products that people enjoy, and feel that we can make a bigger positive impact by going ahead and allowing people to support the pollinators by utilizing and buying those products. So we went ahead and we bottled our honey, what surplus we had last year, and then we went ahead and developed the skin balms and lip balms that are available on our website for those that are interested in those products. And every year we have new offerings and expand with market demands. We've got a new product that we're going to start working on here shortly through the winter R&D season, because the bees go to bed here in November, and there's not a lot to do with them. It's my time to sit down with all my support network and decide on the next great thing. So I'm pretty excited because we've got a product coming next year that we're all pretty excited about. So I'm not going to tell anybody what it is yet, but check in next year because it's going to be big.
All right, we will do that. Maybe we'll have a follow-up podcast. You reveal that.
There you go.
You know, you mentioned about the bees going to bed in November. So is there such a thing as vacation time for you?
Vacation, I think, is really kind of what you make it. So I do have bee downtime and business downtime, and all my folks that I work with understand when each happens, right? So in the spring, summer, and early fall, that's all bee time. So my bee people know that's when they can find me in yards or painting, the boxes or building boxes or doing whatever I need to support the bees. And then in November, there's this transition that kind of happens, and my business people know, oh, now's the time you can go ahead and get a hold of Jen because she's in the office working. Right? So November through March is kind of my time to do all my research and development for products or packaging, finding the right bottle, finding the right label, those kinds of things, and finding the right genetics for next year, because that's really important for me is the genetic research that I do to go ahead and find a more mite-resistant bee. And so I bring in genetics from all over the Pacific Northwest and California to support that effort. And so finding the right stock is a winter thing as well. So vacation, I'm not sure what vacation means.
Yeah. It's so complicated. It's just so much more detailed than I envisioned. I'm very impressed by what you do. So, last question. We want people to come visit you and buy your products and learn from you. So, what should people know about getting in touch with you?
There's a bunch of different ways to get in touch with us. We have a Facebook site. We also have a website, which is pretty cool. We just finished our website this spring. So that's a new cool way to get a hold of us. I also do some posting on Instagram, so that's always available. And visiting the apiary is truly a remarkable and pretty rare experience. There aren't a lot of these kinds of venues. There are very few beekeeping companies that offer this kind of educational and pollinator interface on a personal level. So we offer people to come out and do an apiary tour, come prepared to learn a lot, enjoy the most amazing scenery available in the country. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we're right on the Sound, so the drive down the island is worth the vacation time, and be amazed by the incredible honeybee.
And what is your website?
It is www.camanoislandhoney.com.
Easy enough. Okay. Well, Dr. Jennifer Short, thank you so much for educating us about bees and about your business and also the Camano Islands a little bit. And it certainly sounds like a wonderful destination and a wonderful thing to see. And I hope Real Food Traveler readers and listeners will come visit you and let you know that they heard about you on this podcast.
Well, thank you, Courtney, for giving me the opportunity. It was a lot of fun. I'm so looking forward to it.